right, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, back to finally talk some comic books here on the channel. It's been a minute, more than a minute, since we've talked anything comic books because of the COVID-19 thing. And while it'd be real easy for me to just sit back and watch everybody else talk about things, I finally got off my butt and decided to actually talk about comic books. Not just the industry, but I wanted to talk about the books and the reason why I love comics in the first place, and that's the characters and the stories. And I don't really care what company they come from. If I like them, I like them. And today we're going to be talking about a book series that I had always heard about but never was into comics. I was spending too much time drinking or thinking about drinking or working or watching movies or playing games and drinking. I wasn't collecting comic books. That's what I'm saying. But there was a book out there called Uncanny X-Force. Oh, there was also X-Force. And I had heard that it was about a Black Ops division of the X-Men started by Cyclops to take care of threats to the mutant world that maybe other people don't really want to know about, doing the dirty deeds and done dirt cheap with people like Wolverine and Domino and Psylocke and Warpath and like all this group of people that were doing things. And there had been other iterations. But what I had heard about was Remender, Rick Remender, and his run on Uncanny X-Force. And I had seen it before, this issue before, but I'd never been able to buy it because I was still getting all my regular stuff. It was hard to figure out how to budget myself to get this book. And I also went into it completely blind. Didn't know if the art was good, but I knew Remender. And Remender writes Deadly Class, one of my favorite books, my absolute favorite books. And so I'm like, well, if I like Deadly Class, I'll give this a shot because it's got this team together of people that I really dig, especially Fantomex. I know that every book, every character, whatever, has fans, and it has his people that don't like him. But I like Fantomex. In fact, I started doing so much research, trying to figure out, I shouldn't say it like that, like I was in some fucking library and like an Indiana Jones movie looking through old card catalogs trying to find Fantomex. What I mean by research is that after reading the first 18 issues of this, and I also read Astonishing X-Men's last run, last run with that had to do with Fantomex, and his character kind of goes away. And in this series with Archangel, Wolverine, Psylocke, Deadpool, and Fantomex, they start this series with a book, a story called, damn it, trying to find the title here. This one goes on for a while without a title card. Wow, I'm like embarrassed now because I just can't find it. But Deadpool. Wow, this is like, I can't even pause this to find the damn thing. They're going after Apocalypse. This is so fucking embarrassing. I can't even find the title of the book that I'm trying to. The Apocalypse Solution. Okay. Sorry. I'm kind of running high off of the live broadcast I just did. So this is called the Apocalypse Solution, where they are going after the newest iteration of Apocalypse that has been reborn. And he's going to eventually run havoc on the entire world as usual. And this group, put together by Archangel himself, and is going in there to just take him out when he's a kid. And not even Cyclops or anybody else, like X-Men wise, knows about this team. Because not even technically, Wolverine is an Avenger right now in this run, in this part of the Marvel universe back then in 2011 or whatever. So he's doing shit like this. Explains a lot, because I was reading Avengers versus X-Men recently, And I was like, man, like it was weird seeing Wolverine be away from the X-Men and with the Avengers, but then also doing this side gig is really cool. Another thing about this book series that's really fantastic is they finally did the Archangel story I've been waiting to hear my whole life, which is what would happen if Archangel really went full on dark. There's a part of the story after this called the Dark Angel Saga that we'll get into talking about. But in this first story, first off, this is drawn by Opena. Oh my God. Opena is fantastic. The art in this book and the writing in this book is one of the best things I've ever seen and I've ever read. This is one of the best books I've ever read, to me. It's also got a version of Deadpool that is exactly the Deadpool I want. It's got a Wolverine written the way I want. It's got Psylocke written the way I want. And this Fantomex guy who I have become more and more intrigued by every single issue I read. And I am going back and purchasing all of his early stuff so that I understand the character, because that's the thing. I'm reading all this and I'm getting all this information about this character that has no context. I know he's a mystery character and he's not going to have everything revealed, but like the more I read, the more I wanted to know. The more that was revealed about what this guy is capable of, the more I wanted to hear about it. Also, in the story about taking down a young Apocalypse, he's got a new set of horsemen, and these horsemen of the Apocalypse are fucking actually legit scary. They're very creepy ass people. His new war is this huge fucking guy that can basically, if he touches you with his sword, you become one of his soldiers. And then you've got the whole thing with Psylocke she's been controlling Warren's transformations between him and Archangel, and they thought they had it all figured out. That the demon that's inside him has been controlled, and they're taking out a young Apocalypse to make sure that all these bad things don't come across, and he can't be used, to become. He won't be one of those wild cards that Apocalypse can use against them all the time. But as the story goes on, and they use this crazy looking ship right here. See that thing right there? Like right here? It looks like it reminds me of Gray Malkin that Cable used to use to get around in. Once they get out there and they run into the four horsemen of the Apocalypse, and of course things don't go right. All the things that you could think of go wrong. It's also an MA book. Okay, this book has got lots of cussing and violence, and I mean, like, you got this Wolverine over getting ready to kill Archangel here scene. Like, it's just Wade gets cut up a bunch of times in this book. They're shot in the head. They're cut to pieces. We're talking about a group of X characters that can take a lot of punishment, but others that they seem so delicate, but somehow are so powerful. Like Psylocke, right? Psylocke was always like in the early days, like the Silvestri days and the late Claremont days when she came around. She had to have special armor on. Now because of who she is with Quanon in her and everything. She's still wearing barely any clothes, and she's one of the deadliest people and the most powerful people in the room. This is a great Psylocke book. I love this. How do you kill a circus? Go for the juggler. Wade is never written as too stupid. He's written as you would want him to be written. And in the end, though, they can't bring themselves to kill baby Apocalypse. And I should also go on about the four horsemen of the Apocalypse that are here. One is this guy who basically came from the Civil War, and he like pounds on his drum, and it causes like pestilence. There's like a geisha that has these flies that come out of her mouth. Every single one of these guys has got just like a real creepy version of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. But in the end, you know, they get what they need to have done, but they get to stopping the kid, and then they can't figure out what to do until Fantomex makes the decision for them and shoots the kid in the head. And that doesn't sit well with everybody. But he says, you know, that he has to be trusted, that he knows what he's doing. That's just the first 4 issues. And it is so well drawn and so well written and funny and dark. And like I said, it's given me an Archangel story that I really wanted. Now there's a 5.1. They do this twice. So I don't have the other one. It's 19.1, but 5.1 and then there's 5. 5.1, okay, gives me this. It literally just says it's called 5.1. And in this story, okay, what we get here is Wolverine and the X-Force team going after Lady Deathstrike and the Reavers, who terrorized Wolverine and the X-Men in the Outback in the Claremont Age. And they're in this bar talking shit, right? And they end up getting just like, we have our X-Force team come in there and just start just taking hits. I mean, look at Wolverine gets the claws to the face. But there's like a lot of history to this fight. And I feel like Remender got a lot of opportunities to do really cool stories that deal with past stories. So you got Archangel's past story about, you know, always worrying about whether he'll turn into the monster and dealing with killing a young Apocalypse, which is a great storyline. Now you get this second little story, and it's just one issue of them basically taking out the Reavers and trying to keep all of this hidden from Cyclops and Magneto and everybody else, because nobody is supposed to know what they're up to. And in the end, you know, they almost get caught. Scott and Magneto kind of figure things out, but they kind of get to cross off a bit of a problem, like something that's been bugging me, and that was the Reavers and all that. And this is like so many years later, and they finally get to take them on. Now, the next series is called Deathlock Nation. Now, I always wondered why in the newest iteration of X-Force that had just been in before Ben Percy's, before Dawn of X and all that, and the Age of X-Men, there was a 9-issue run of X-Force, and Deathlock played a big part of it. And now I know why, because he played a part in this Uncanny X-Force run called Deathlock Nation, where someone was trying to make Deathlocks go through all the timelines, I believe, and they're trying to stop them from basically running through things, killing everybody. And I thought that this was a nice setup for what's to come, because this bridges the gap between big stories, between this story and the Dark Angel saga that is about to start. And it's a 2-issue run. I mean, again, they tell a lot of stories within the 2 issues. And like I said, I haven't been putting them up to the screen, I know, but what ends up happening is they have to go to save Warren from becoming Apocalypse. They have to get Dark Beast from Age of Apocalypse. Okay, so like he's here in our world. And he tells them that in order to save Warren, in order for Warren to not become what they're worried he's going to become, because they killed this whole thing starts with them killing the kid. or Fantomex killing the kid. They're worried that he's going to become literally in succession the next apocalypse. And they have to go to the age of apocalypse from the early 90s, the like late, 94, 95, 96 era, to get a thing called the life seed, bring it back, and they say, Warren, well, if you thought that wasn't going to be problems, well, of course it's going to be problems. And I wish this thing had a pause screen because it really makes me have to like rush through some of this stuff that I really don't want to. But starting off with, there's a few other issues before we get to that, right? So we're going to talk about issue number 8. Okay. Uncanny X-Force number 8 is Betsy Braddock versus the Shadow King. This is called Unintended Consequences, and this also kind of plays into later on, then you could say, for the Astonishing X-Men story that I read just a couple years ago, where Shadow King versus Xavier, and how that brings Phantom X into the astral plane where he was stuck there. There's a whole lot of things that happen later on. But in this, we find out that Phantom X has been raising a clone version of Apocalypse. So he killed the kid version, right? He killed the kid version because he was already too far gone, he said. But he'd been raising in a tank for a while, and then he released it into this thing called the World, which I still don't know anything. Like, I still don't completely understand the World. He says it's like a workshop. So he's been having this little Apocalypse kid be raised by a family, put him on the hero's path, seeing if whether or not is Apocalypse just destined to be a bad guy, or could we change things so that Apocalypse could be the greatest hero of all of us? But there's more to it than that, because they have to lock Archangel up. And oh my gosh, some of this. Okay, this art is from, like I said, this is from Tan, and his art is just as good as Opinion's. And it also just really, I mean, like, I've never seen Archangel drawn quite so, I don't know what to say. He looks like Archangel always looked cool, but now he looks like a person, if that makes sense to you guys. Like, he always looked like a comic book character, but in this you can see all the like way he's put together that actually makes him seem more real, if that makes any sense to you guys. A little more grounded in reality for a completely unrealistic thing. But she ends up fighting the Shadow King, and he's trying to pull some shit, as of course. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of violence. I love this shot here of her going into her old armor state that that takes us back to like the early 90s, late 80s. But it turns out, like I said, they find the kid. They also find out that Archangel, he cuts the head off of this guy who was basically doing the Shadow King, and he kills a guy who was like seconds away from a launch button. He's going to release a deadly explosion on everybody. The next issue we're going to talk about really quickly is issue number 9. Bear with me, folks. I realize this is not a regular review that I'm doing, and I hopefully will get better at them, because I'm talking about 18 issues of a book right here. But this one also stands out because this is a story about Magneto. It shows Wolverine on the cover, but this is a very quick and personal story that Remender wrote with Tan's art as well. And in this, Magneto gets word of a Nazi who was at the camp that he was in. And he tells Wolverine, I need you to go take care of this. This is the cost of you doing what you're doing, is you're going to go kill this guy for me. Like, you want this nobody to know about you guys being X-Force. I need you to go down to South America and take a guy out for me. This book is called High Art, and there's a lot. This reminds me of Livio Remendelli's art. I know that that's probably because I've been recently reading his stuff more, but it's a lot of visual storytelling, not a lot of words in this book. Because as you can see, it's just moments. They're letting you read between the lines. They're letting you get into the characters' heads yourself. And so he gets this information, and he calls for Wolverine to come take this guy out. And he's like, well, why can't you do it? Because he's asking you. It ain't a revenge squad. Well, so and it really is simple. Because Wolverine just goes and does it. I mean, you see this guy who he sees his death coming. He walks inside, waits for Wolverine to come inside and everything. And they have a conversation about, I never forgot that I didn't deserve a single moment of the happiness I'd been given because of all the things he'd done. But he just kept surviving and kept going. And now Wolverine is this guy coming to kill him. And, he's basically saying, like, you're not much different. What's going on right here with me and how it's all come to this. And now there's the man at the door to kill me. He's seeing basically, he kind of talks that way to Wolverine. He's like, no man outruns his past. I hope you will try and remember that when your victims come for you. And that's the end of that guy, as he has a picture that he lets go of. And again, it's just this simple story, but I love that it's just this very unique story right in the middle of this run of 19 of the 18 that we're talking about. Now, what happens then is they go to the Age of Apocalypse. Dark Beast takes them there. It's immediately a shit show. Even Deadpool's like, anybody else want to bet how much this is going to go south for us? But the cool thing is Uncanny X-Force gets to tackle a part of the X-Men universe that was like the last thing that I read before I stopped collecting comics in the 90s, which was Age of Apocalypse. And it was such a fun storyline because all of our characters were so different. And they got, and sure, it's the little fun, little dumb things that they get to do for us occasionally, where we get to see a different version of somebody that we like. Like in this version, Nightcrawler, in Age of Apocalypse, Nightcrawler, he is not the simple man of God, I shouldn't say simple. He's not the holy man of God anymore. He is a fucking hardcore motherfucker who's running around with that sword, and it ain't for show. Victor Creed in this world, Sabretooth is a good guy. Wolverine, in saving his world in Age of Apocalypse, became Apocalypse because it was the only choice he felt like he had, and he goes bad, and now Jean has got to fight him, and all the remaining survivors of Age of Apocalypse start to meet their demise after all these years. We start to finally get like a glimpse at the end of that storyline, and it's in some ways I felt like bad because it was so long ago, and some of these characters that we liked reading about in that series kind of get taken out uneventfully. But I mean, it's been a really long time, and nothing lasts forever. And so like certain things, like certain characters getting killed, I was okay with. I also love the homage to what some of the things that happened in Age of Apocalypse they deal with like Nightcrawler taking Wade's head off a second time, like he did in Age of Apocalypse. He decapitated Deadpool in that storyline. In this, he does it again, but he's tricked by Fantomex's illusions. But eventually, Wolverine from this world realizes that if they leave, he doesn't want to leave his friends to die here in another apocalypse that they could stop. But at the same time, if they don't get back in time, they're going to find out that Warren is changed and has become Apocalypse. But it all becomes moot because Dark Beast leaves them. And even though they get out of it, they come back to our world. And Archangel has already ascended to what he needed to, to be the next Apocalypse. And now they've left the Age of Apocalypse characters behind, and now they have to deal with all this stuff by themselves. I also really like that Jean and Wolverine, our Wolverine, meeting this Jean who fell in love with Logan on her side, and her having to tell him, I'm not your Jean, you're not my Wolverine. Yet somehow they still end up kind of drawn to each other throughout this. Also, I completely, because I'm not going to go over every little thing, right? Because we're already pushing like 25 minutes talking about this. But Archangel turns and he goes full on motherfucking bad guy to the point where he's also drawn. So I keep talking about how well he's drawn in this book, but they kind of go back and forth with Opena here. But the members of Age of Apocalypse that survive come back to our world to help stop things. You got Sunfire, who's got one of the best designs of Sunfire I had ever seen from way back then. I really dig it. Hopefully I can find a picture of it for you guys. Also, Dark Beast, Opena's drawings and Tan's version of Dark Beast. I haven't seen Beast drawn this well since Jim Lee was doing X-Men. But in the 11th hour, Fantomex is forced to bring the Apocalypse that he's been raising to fight Archangel and take him down before he can do any worse, because he's already blown up an entire city in like Nebraska or something like that. I love how they go to places where there's where you never hear of anything happening. Is Nebraska even a place? I forget half the time. But they always are some city out in the middle of nowhere that I don't know. It's been a long day, and I apologize. And like I said, this is my first time doing Old Comic Book Day. I will be more planned out next time because but I also said I'm covering 18 issues. Psylocke taking down, and this is what I mean. Look at how they draw him. Look at all the pieces that are on Archangel. He's almost more like Nebula when he's Archangel. He's just all these little things just pieced together to make him look like Apocalypse. But in the end, they are able to finally stop what's happening. I'm not giving you all the details because I want you to read this series. If you can pick up the trade yourself, whatever. But they think Archangel died. And it is this great moment of him walking out of the snow completely naked. And I don't know. It's just a beautiful thing. Remender's writing is fantastic. I can't recommend a book highly enough that it came out 9 years ago. And that's how it's going to be for right now, is we're going to find some books to talk about for Old Comic Book Day every Wednesday. We're not going to have comic book reviews all throughout the week. It gives me a chance to maybe focus on one book or one series at a time here and now. So that's it. Uncanny X-Force, one of the best books that I've ever read, one of the best written books, one of the best drawn books. I'm starting to read the next 18 issues, and they're also really cool. They bring in Excalibur and Nightcrawler and all sorts of stuff that's really, really cool. So if you like hearing about Uncanny X-Force and why you should go back and reread it, if you've got it in your boxes, or if you can get it on trade, or you can find it online, or you can watch it, or you can read it on your tablet, whatever, I highly recommend reading it. So if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. You can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. Otherwise, we'll be back next week to talk more old comic books on Old Comic Book Day. Have a great night, everybody, and keep reading comics. Bye.